G'day and welcome to Todd's Kitchen. I've seen this plastered all over Facebook over the last couple of weeks, so I just had to recreate it at home. It's actually very simple to make and it's absolutely delicious. So join me today as I make my version of a donut ice cream cone. Now you can warm it up in the microwave or leave it to room temperature, but you don't want it too hot because it can kill the yeast. So to that I'm just going to add in 1 tablespoon of sugar and follow that up with 1 7-gram packet of dry active yeast. And we're just going to leave that for about 10 minutes to activate and soak up all that milk. Okay, so next into a mixing bowl, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of melted butter, followed by another half a cup of warm milk, 1/3 a cup of sugar, and half a teaspoon of salt. Then give it a good mix for a couple of minutes until it's well combined and the sugar's dissolved. Okay, now that's all mixed together. Next I have our yeast, and just see how it's bubbled up on the surface. That means it's perfect. That's exactly how you want it. So we're just going to pour our yeast mixture into our bowl. Okay, so for this next step, I'm going to use a dough hook. Now if you don't have a dough hook, it's very easy to do this by hand. All you have to do is just knead it for about 5 minutes. So basically what I have here is 3 cups of all-purpose flour or plain flour. And I'm just going to add 2.5 cups of that into our mixing bowl. So we're just going to leave half to the side for the moment. And we're just going to start kneading our dough. Now we're going to use the extra half and we're going to do it slowly, so once this is completely mixed in the bowl, if you find that the dough hook hasn't picked up and you get like a dough ball, if you find that that dough ball isn't coming away from the sides, just add a little bit more flour until you get to the right texture where it's just going to pull away from the sides and not stick, which is pretty much exactly the same how you do it if you were kneading it. Just keep on adding a little bit of that extra half of cup of flour until it's not sticky. Okay, so as you can see, it's now mixed, but it's still pretty sticky because it's not moving away from the sides. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of our flour and just let that mix through. Now I've only added about 1/4 of our remaining half, and just see how it's just starting to come away from the sides. That means it's almost there. Okay, so as you can see, our dough ball is now moving freely around the bowl and it's not sticking to the sides. Just a very slight amount on the bottom, but that's okay. So now we're just going to knead it for a further 5 minutes. So just pushing it forward, pulling it back, pushing it forward for about 5 minutes, and then it'll just work the yeast throughout the whole dough. Now once kneaded, I'm going to place our dough into a greased dish and cover it up. We're going to leave it in here for about, say, 10 to 20 minutes until it's doubled in size. Okay, so the dough's risen and I've just taken it out of the bowl. So we're just going to cut off a small amount at a time. And with some flour on the base, just to prevent it from sticking, we're just going to roll it out to basically a long snake shape. Now for the cone mold, I've just got some normal tin foil and I've just shaped it into the size of a large cone shape like so. So what we have to do is simply wrap our dough around the cone shape from top to bottom, and so it's all covered. Okay, so next we're going to make up our sugar and cinnamon. So basically I have our sugar here and we're going to mix about 5 parts sugar to 1 part cinnamon. And with some egg wash, it's just an egg I've beaten up. Just going to use a brush and just coat our donut cone in our egg wash. And once coated, simply dip it into our sugar and cinnamon. Okay, so once coated, we're going to place this into a preheated oven at 200 degrees Celsius or 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 8 to 10 minutes. Basically, when you see it's golden brown, take it straight out of the oven because it's ready. Now I've had our cone out of the oven for a couple of hours now because you want it to be completely cool, otherwise your ice cream's going to melt pretty fast. And I've just simply taken out the foil center. So now for the ice cream, I just have some plain vanilla ice cream here, and I've also let it rest at room temperature for about 15 minutes. It just helps soften it up so you get that nice soft serve consistency. And having it in a piping bag, just simply pipe our ice cream into our donut cone. And of course, as an optional extra, a topping of chocolate. And would you look at that lovely, delicious donut ice cream cone. So you don't have to find a specialty shop to make it because they're so simple to make at home. And at probably 1/100th of the price that they charge too. But a donut and an ice cream, why didn't we think of this sooner? It is just absolutely fantastic. All those flavors working together, you know, without even trying it, but I guarantee that you will, that this is going to taste simply delish. Now we are going to start these Krispy Kreme donuts off by activating our yeast. So into a mixing bowl, I'm going to place a 1/4 cup of warm water, and then to that 2 tablespoons or about 20 grams of dry yeast. So we're just going to leave that for about 2 minutes just to soak up that water. So next I'm going to add in 1½ cups of warm milk. Next, 1/2 cup of sugar, 1/3 cup of melted butter, 2 beaten eggs, and finally 2 cups of regular flour. Now using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, we're going to beat this on low for about 3 to 4 minutes until it's well combined. Okay, so it's been a few minutes, it's all mixed through and nice and smooth. So now we're just going to add the remaining 3 cups of flour. So we're using a total of 5 cups in total. And we're going to mix this through until we get to a nice dough consistency. Now once we've formed our dough, we're just going to get some plastic wrap and just cover it up, just so it's nice and airtight. And now we're just going to leave these here for about 60 minutes to give it a chance to rise. Now as you can see, it has risen nicely. Now if you don't have a stand mixer, just put it onto a floured surface and you're going to knead it for about 5 to 6 minutes. So you want to keep on kneading it until it comes up nice and elastic. But if you have a stand mixer with a dough hook, we're going to use a dough hook on a low speed and knead it for 5 minutes. Now that we've done all our kneading, I'm going to work with 1/4 of our mix at a time, just to make it easier. So I have 1/4 of our mix on a floured board. I'm just going to give it a quick sprinkle with some flour, and I'm going to use a roller and just flour that up as well. And now we're just going to evenly roll it out. You want it to about that thick, give or take. Don't forget, it will rise, so it won't be the final thickness. Now once it's rolled out, we're going to use 2 different cutters. We're going to use a large cookie cutter, and then we're going to use a smaller one for the middle. And there we have our first donut. Now it's up to you, some people tend to cook these centers as so, but what I like to do is just knead it into another ball so you can make even more donuts. So now we have our first batch of Krispy Kreme donuts, so just get a light dusting with some flour just on top just to prevent sticking. And with some baking paper, just cover them up just like so. And we're going to let them sit there for about 40 minutes to give them a chance to rise. Now it's time to cook our donuts. Now for this step I'm going to use a portable deep fryer, but if you're confident to use a pot, then go for it, that's fine. But these little deep fryers work so well because they take all the guessing work out of it. And they're also relatively inexpensive too. So I have it set for 180 degrees Celsius, or about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So carefully with our donuts, we're going to place in a few at a time. And we're going to cook them for about 2 to 3 minutes. So just do 3 or 4 at a time. You don't want to overcrowd the fryer. So at about halfway, we're going to just flip them over. So now once they're cooked all the way through, just simply pick them up and let them drain for a few seconds, place them on a plate and get started on the rest. Now finally we're going to make our donut glaze. So into a mixing bowl I'm going to place in 2 cups of powdered or icing sugar, followed by 1/3 cup of melted butter, about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 5 tablespoons of hot water. Now simply mix it through until it's well combined. Okay, so once all mixed, all we have to do now is simply grab our donuts and we're just going to cover them in our glaze. And just place them on a plate and continue on until they're all done. Now there we have some very delicious, very scrumptious, very irresistible Krispy Kreme donuts. Now apart from tasting exactly like a normal Krispy Kreme donut, there is one other major advantage to making it at home. Now for everyone that's actually brought Krispy Kreme donuts in the past, you will know how much they cost. But the ingredients for these donuts cost me between $3 and $4. And look how many that made. Now could you just imagine how much all these donuts would cost if you bought them from Krispy Kremes? Now at last count, I made just over 90 donuts from this recipe. So that's 90 Krispy Kreme style donuts for less than $4. So that means there'll be more than 1 or 2 or 3 for you and your friends. But the best thing about these homemade Krispy Kreme donuts is that they taste simply delish. Now we're going to start this off by making up 2 different flavoured jellos, or jelly depending on your country. So this part's very simple, just follow the packet directions. We're going to dissolve it in some boiling water, but what I want you to do is just add a quarter less water than what the directions on the packet say. Otherwise, if you want to stiffen it up, just add some gelatine. But by doing it this way, by adding a little bit less water, you don't have to add the gelatine. Okay, so once it's completely dissolved, we're going to place this into the fridge for about a good 2 hours to completely set. Now our jello's in the fridge and it's pretty much set now. So for the final stage, we're going to use half a cup of warm water, and to that I'm just going to sprinkle on a tablespoon of gelatine. And we're just going to let that sit there for about, say, 10 minutes. Just give it a chance to soak up that water and soften up. Now that we've softened up our gelatine, I'm going to add in about 1 cup of sweetened condensed milk. And give that a good mix around until everything is nicely combined. Now one of our jellos is set, so I'm just going to get a knife. And we're just going to slowly cut out some mini squares, just like so. So I have a donut baking tray, and I've just given it a quick grease with some cooking spray oil. So we're just going to place some of our cubes, our jello cubes, in each mold. And then fill each mold with our sweetened condensed milk. Now once done, all we have to do is place these into the fridge for a couple of hours to give it a chance for everything to completely set. Now I've just taken our donuts out of the fridge, and don't they look scrumptious? But that lovely jelly taste really just comes down to the flavours that you choose to add. And you can also change it up for any season. Say for Christmas, for example, you may want to add red and green. So the sky's the limit, but either way you do it, these donuts are going to taste simply delish. Now this is very similar to a cake, but with a few little tweaks. It's basically just one giant donut. So we're going to start by creaming the butter and sugar. So into a mixing bowl, we're going to place in 225 grams of softened butter, then 390 or 1 1/4 cups of sugar. And with a handle stand mixer, we're going to beat this up for about 3 to 4 minutes until it's nice and creamy. Now look how pale and creamy that is, it's perfect. So next I have 4 eggs, so we're just going to add in 1 egg at a time. Just let it mix through, and we're going to add the 2nd egg, and the 3rd egg, and so forth. Okay, once the eggs are mixed through, I'm going to add in 1 1/2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Then to enhance the flavour, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. And for our final 2 ingredients, I'm going to add 235 ml of milk, and 390 grams or 2 cups of self-raising flour, or the same amount of flour, but just add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and just mix it through until it's combined. Okay, next we're going to need a pan. Now, just try and find the closest thing you can that will resemble a donut, basically with a thing in the middle there. You don't have to go and buy a specific pan that says donut on it. These have many uses, but it's going to work perfectly for what we want. So firstly, with some cooking spray oil or some butter, just give it a very good grease. And then we're going to pour in half of our mixture into this one, then half of our mixture into another one, just so we end up with a 2-tiered donut cake. Now what we have to do is place this into a preheated oven at 365 degrees Fahrenheit or 190 degrees Celsius for 40 minutes. Now both of our halves have cooled down completely. Now this is very important. So next I'm going to add some topping which will form our middle layer. Now you can use jam, say strawberry jam, but personally I'm going to use a passion fruit and fig jam. This is very delicious, I highly recommend it, but you could use anything you want. As I said, strawberry is most popular, but feel free to experiment. Now, it wouldn't be a 2-tiered cake without some fresh whipped cream. So into a mixing bowl, I'm just going to place in some fresh cream, some whipping cream or double cream, and simply give it a good whisk in a hand or stand mixer until we get to the soft peak stage. Now once at the soft peak stage, I'm going to add in a couple of tablespoons of powdered sugar just for extra sweetness. Just mix it through for another, say 30 seconds and it's ready. Now all we have to do is simply place the desired amount of whipped cream, it's completely up to you, on top of our first layer of cake. You can have it thin or you can have it thick. Now of course it wouldn't be a donut without a lovely icing topping. That's very simple to make, so into a mixing bowl I'm going to place in say about 2 cups worth of powdered sugar. Then for colour, now it's important that you do the colour first. You're going to put in a few drops of red food colouring. Of course you can choose a different colour if you like. Now this is where you play by ear. Basically you're going to add a few drops at a time of water just until you get to the right consistency. You don't want it too runny, otherwise it's just going to come out too thin, but of course you also don't want it too thick as well. This is why you put the colour in first, because if you do the colour last, well it's just going to end up runnier than what you want it. So just take your time and just add a little bit of water at a time until you get to the right consistency. Of course if you overdo it with the water, just add a little bit more powdered sugar till you get to a thicker consistency that you're after. And all you have to do is just carefully pour your icing mixture on top of our donut cake. Don't do too much at once, do a little bit because it will spread. So take your time and you'll get a far better result. And finally, just to spruce it up just a little bit more, I'm just going to pour on some sprinkles. Because we all love sprinkles on our donuts. Now how simple and easy was that? It really is a simple but fun and delicious donut cake to make. And the best part is you can make it with ingredients that you have laying around the house, and you don't need to buy one special mold just for the cake. You can use any type of bundt type pan available, because there's nothing worse than having to buy a specific type of equipment for something you'll only use probably once or twice and you'll end up throwing out. But above all, with those 2 layers and those cream and jam filling, and don't forget that icing and sprinkle topping, this donut cake tastes simply delish. Now the batter and preparation for these donuts is incredibly simple. So into a mixing bowl we're going to place in our flour. This is self-raising flour. Then our sugar. Now you'll find the list of ingredients in the description. And to that 2 beaten eggs. Our melted butter. Half a teaspoon of salt. And what that does is it helps enhance the flavour. Then our milk. And then 2 tablespoons of vanilla extract. Now using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, we're going to beat this up until it's nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do now is, as I'm using 5 different colours, we're going to separate it evenly into 5 separate bowls. So for the next part, just use whatever colours you can get a hold of. So for one I'm going to do red, then a green, some pink, some blue, and some yellow. And just using a separate spoon every time, just so you don't mix the colours up, we're just going to give it a good mix through for each one. Okay, so next I've got a donut baking tray. Now I just picked this up at my local shop, so if you can't find one, just Google it, I'm sure you'll find one. So with some cooking spray oil, I'm just going to give it a good grease. And now what we're going to do is grab our colours one at a time. And I'm just going to place them just in like so. So as you can see, you need to be very quick because it does start to spread. So we're just going to continue on until they're all done. Okay, so all our donut molds are full. And doesn't that look colourful? So now what we're going to do is we're going to place this into a preheated oven at 210 degrees for 8 minutes. Okay, so I've taken them out of the oven, I've let them cool down just for a little bit, not too long, and they've come out fantastic. So I've turned an everyday boring donut into something colourful and fun. Now if you choose, you can add some sugar and cinnamon, or you can even put a nice glaze on them. But as long as they're warm, they're still going to be fine as is because they've still got quite a bit of sugar in them. But what matters the most is how do they taste? Oh, that's good. For me personally, now I don't have donuts that often, but when I do, I only have them warm. Because when they're cold, they're just simply not as good. And with these donuts being baked and not deep fried, they are slightly healthier than normal donuts. but it's still good to have them in moderation. But the only thing that really matters is that these rainbow donuts taste simply delish. Now, who said donuts just have to be doughy with some sugar on top? So I'm going to step it up a notch by putting the flavour inside the donut. Now we're going to start this off with our bowl. Now you can do this by hand, you can use a hand mixer, but I'm going to use my trusty old stand mixer. So first things first, into our bowl we're going to place 1 egg, that's 1 large egg, then half a cup of brown sugar. Now you can use white sugar, but brown sugar honestly tastes so much better. And then to that we're going to add, well, a 1/4 cup of normal sugar, because those two flavours just really work. Then to that I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of coconut oil. Now you can use vegetable oil if you like, but coconut oil tastes so much better. Coconut and bananas is just delish. Next I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt. Now you can also substitute that for sour cream if you like. Then 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And finally 1 cup, which works out to about 2 ripe bananas. Now the darker the skin of the banana, the better they are, because that's where all the flavour is. And with your hand mixer, and of course stand mixer like I'm using, just mix everything up until it's all well combined. Okay, so once everything's nice and combined, doesn't matter if it's a little lumpy, most of that's from the banana. Lastly, we're going to add 1 1/4 cup of self-raising flour or plain flour with about a teaspoon of baking powder. And then we're going to add half a teaspoon of baking soda. And you usually add that when you're having something with fruit in it, because it just gives the baking powder that little bit of extra help just for everything to rise properly. And lastly, just to help enhance all those lovely flavors, just a pinch of salt. And then we're just going to mix it away for about 30 seconds or so, just till everything is well combined. Just don't over mix it, otherwise you're going to come up with very dry donuts. So you want it to mix it till it's just combined. And that's it. Now lastly, I've got a donut tray here. They can get these pretty cheaply. So we're just going to give each donut hole a quick grease. And just simply spoon your mixture into each donut section. Now you only want them about half to 3/4 full, because they will rise. Now you can go to the trouble of putting it into a piping bag to pipe them in, but honestly, I just prefer it this way. It actually saves time, because you've got to get all the piping bag ready, put everything in. Actually, it works out to more of a mess. It only takes a few seconds to fill each donut hole. Okay, so once done, we're going to place this into a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit for say about 14 minutes, and you know they're ready when you touch them on top and they spring back. Okay, so our donuts are out of the oven and I have them cooling on a wire rack. Now they need to be cool for this next step to work properly. So just into a bowl, I'm going to place in, it's about half a cup of powdered or icing sugar. Same thing, different name. And purely optional, but I like to add just about a teaspoon of vanilla extract and about a tablespoon of water now. Not too much, just a little bit at a time, and we're going to mix it till we get to a nice thick paste. So this one, there's no exact measurements, you just play by ear, just till you get to the right consistency. See, it's too thick, so we're just going to add some more water. We don't want it runny, but we also don't want it too thick as well. So mix it, make sure you get all the lumps out, but with icing sugar you never really get any lumps anyway, because it's a very fine powder and it just dissolves into the water very well. So we don't want it too runny, but we don't want it too thick, but see how it just coats the back of the spoon? Just like that. That's exactly how we want it, because we want to be able to coat our donuts in this lovely glaze. Okay, so donuts are nice and cool, and look at that. Nice and springy. So just with the glaze that we just made, we're just going to just pour it over just on the outside like so, and just let it run down. Now I've just taken these donuts out of the fridge. It just helps that lovely glaze set. And I did have to do a second run over with the glaze, but as you can see, it's turned out perfectly. So you have the taste of those lovely banana donuts on the inside and that extra sweetness of the glaze on the outside. Now donuts definitely aren't one of those healthy treats that you're going to eat, but this baked version really does taste delicious. So I'm not going to say just because it's baked it's healthy, because honestly it's not. So I wouldn't be eating a whole lot myself, but honestly, a couple now and then in moderation is a-okay. And it's completely optional if you want to use the glaze, but it really does make it look and taste so much better. But regardless of whether you use the glaze or not, either way, these banana donuts are going to taste simply delish. Okay, so to start this off, into a mixing bowl, I'm going to pour in our milk. That's 3/4 cup. I'll leave a list of the ingredients in the description as always. And to that, our vegetable oil and 1 beaten egg. And we're just going to mix this just for about a few seconds, just till it's well combined. Okay, now that that's mixed through, we're going to add in our self-raising flour. Now this is 1 3/4 worth, but if you don't have self-raising flour, you can use normal flour or all-purpose flour, and just add about 2 tablespoons of baking powder. Then we're going to add our caster sugar or superfine sugar, a pinch of salt, which helps enhance the flavors, then our ground nutmeg, and our ground cinnamon. And we're just going to mix this through until it's just combined. Okay, next I've got a muffin tray here, and I've just lined each muffin tray with a muffin cup. So it's just a simple matter of grabbing the batter and evenly dividing it between 12 muffin cups. Okay, once done, we're going to place this into a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius for 20 to 25 minutes. And at about 20 minutes, check them with a wooden skewer. If it comes out clean, they're ready. Now while our muffin donuts are in the oven, we're going to prepare our cinnamon topping. So into a container, I'm going to place 4 tablespoons of sugar to 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. And just simply mix it through until it's well combined. Okay, so our donut muffins are out and they smell lovely. Now they haven't completely cooled down yet. Reason being, we still want to do our cinnamon top. So I've just melted a small amount of butter in the microwave and I'm using a brush. And what we're going to do is just lightly brush the top of each donut muffin. And then with our cinnamon sugar mixture, we're just going to grab our muffin and we're just going to twirl it, dip it, just like that. And just continue on until they're all done. And there we have our donut muffins. So they were incredibly easy to make and they're going to taste exactly like cinnamon donuts. But let's give one a try. Oh, that is good. Really, really good. It has a lovely, fluffy texture, but that taste, oh boy, that taste. It tastes exactly like a cinnamon donut, except that it's in muffin form. So it's not deep fried, it's not round, it's in a cupcake holder, but the thing is, it tastes simply delish. Now to start this delicious baked donut recipe, into a mixing bowl, I've mashed up 2 whole bananas. So we're just going to place that right in. Next I'm going to place in a 1/4 cup of sugar, then 1 egg, then a 1/4 cup of plain yogurt. Now I'm using non-fat Greek yogurt for this. Then a couple of tablespoons of melted butter, and to enhance the flavour, a pinch of salt. Next, using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, we're going to whisk this through until it's well combined. Okay, so our wet ingredients are completely combined, so into that I'm going to place in 1 cup of self-raising flour. Now if you don't have self-raising flour, just use plain flour with about a 1/4 tablespoon of baking powder. And finally we're going to add in a 1/4 tablespoon of baking soda or bicarb soda. Then just simply mix it through until it's well combined. And finally I'm going to use a donut baking tray. Now you can buy these pretty much anywhere, if not just Google them, I'm sure you'll find a stockist. So it's just a simple matter of spooning our mixture into our donut tray. And we want to fill each one about 3/4 of the way up. Okay, once we've filled up all our donuts, we're going to place this into a preheated oven at 220 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 minutes. Okay, so I've taken our donuts out of the oven and I've also let them cool down. And while they're cooling down, I've melted up some chocolate. You don't have to do this. This is an optional extra. It's just to decorate them. So grabbing one of our donuts, just place it in the chocolate and just drip off any excess. And lastly, I have some sprinkles. So while the chocolate is still wet, just dip our donut into the sprinkles. And there we have our colourful banana donuts. Now, as I said, it's completely optional if you want to add any chocolate or sprinkles on top. You could even just use the old sugar and cinnamon. It'll work just as well. But everyone loves sprinkles because they're just so colourful and sugary. But whether you have them with sprinkles or without, these banana donuts are still going to taste simply delish. So they're incredibly easy to make. They really took no time to prepare whatsoever. So thank you for watching this episode of Todd's Kitchen. As always, I'll leave a list of ingredients down below, as well as links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Home Handy Hints channel. And please do me a massive favour by giving this video a thumbs up, leave a comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time for another delicious recipe.